Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to start a series of short videos dealing with pickups and point systems. It'll migrate from a single level game to a multiple level game. So right now this is going to be about the setup. I have I have this as a standby. You might want to think about creating one of these as well. Just a little program that, okay, I've got my tank on here. It used to shoot. Let me bring this back out a little bit. It shoots. It has its navigation. It does everything it needs to do. I've got a plane, so this gives me a good starting point. The first thing we want to do here is we need some coins to pick up. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to go out here and I'm going to add mesh, and I'm going to add a UV sphere. Now the UV sphere, drop this down a little bit, make this a little bigger. I want it to look like a coin, so I'm going to do a little editing on this. I'm going to scale it on the x-axis. So I'm going to go scale x and squeeze it in. And then what I'm going to do, instead of sphere, I'm going to call it coin. Got to get our naming conventions down. I'm going to come over here and add a new material to it. Now this is going to be very important because when we start getting into point systems, there's a lot of sensors that are looking for specific materials. So we're going to put a material on here, and I'm going to call it coin. And just because I like gold coins, we can make this real bright yellow. Yeah, there we go. So now we have a material called coin on this object called coin. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a situation where we can pick this object up and have it count as points. Right now, all that happens if I hit play, whoops, I got to get to it, don't I? It just stops. It's a static object with no properties. So the first thing we want to do, let's see, make sure, yeah, I have tank as my material here. First thing we're going to do with this coin is we're going to add a material. Now we want this coin to end after it's been picked up. We want it to disappear. So you want to put that set of logic bricks on the coin itself, whatever object is going to end. So first off, we're going to say a touch sensor, and when it's touched by a material called tank, here we go, a lot of things on here. I want it to edit object. Instead of add, I want it to end object. So we'll see if that works first. I'm going to set this up on top so I can actually pull this over and make this a little easier. Push this down, get it close to the ground floor. Hit P. So now when I go and touch it, it should disappear. All right, so we've got that piece of it down. And we'll work on more coins and those kinds of things here in a little bit. But what we want to do is we want to create a system to where the points will actually keep score. So let's add another actuator to this. This is going to be a message actuator. We're going to send a message somewhere. We haven't decided yet. We're going to send it to something. But we're going to call this, the subject is going to be pickup. So all of our coins that we have that are gold are going to be called pickup. So I'm going to associate this here. And again, right now when you hit play, nothing happens. You go through and nothing. But we're getting our situation, we're getting our message traffic ready to send. So basically we're going to send messages back and forth to something. So we need to create that something. What that's going to be is an empty object. So we're going to come up here and I'm just going to add empty and add a plain axis. What I'm going to call, instead of empty2, I'm going to call this score. And again, naming, not score2, score. Naming conventions get very important with this because to us these are names, but to the computer these are what they call syntax. It's a string of characters, and a string of characters have to match exactly before anything will work. So again, we really have nothing up here to deal with that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a couple of things to this level. First off is we're going to add a game property. And we're going to call this property score. Now what the game property is going to do, it's going to register an integer. We're going to work in whole numbers. It's going to start at 0. And then right here, and this is, if you want your game to start at 10 or something, you can do that. But most games start at 0. And this is a little button we have to depress to make sure that we show debug properties. Now, that it prints debug properties. What we're talking about here is when we do programming, when we troubleshoot programming problems, we use debug as a way of taking lines of code and printing it to the screen. Well, this is what it's going to do. It's going to take this one line of code, this debug line of code, and it's going to print it for us. Now, the way we get to see it on the screen is we have to make sure we come up here. We have to be in Blender Game, but we have to go to Game, and we have to show debug properties. This little checkbox has to be marked. That's going to allow us to see the debug properties up here where this empty is. So if I hit P for play, now I get my debug properties, and it says score equals 0. But unfortunately, when I go through and I touch this, nothing happens yet because we haven't set the message traffic up yet. So what we need to do on our, so first off, we've got our property set here. So we've got score is the name of our property. We're using whole numbers integer. We're starting at 0, and we're writing debug information. So let's close this down a little bit. So now what we need to do is we need to send a message from here to here. So we're going to use on here, we're going to use as a sensor a message sensor. So your debug up here, or your message, there we go. Your empty, which is your scoreboard, is waiting for a message. And the subject we've already established is going to be pickup. And again, it's got to be spelled exactly the same. Then we're going to go through and we're going to add a property actuator. Now this property, instead of assign, we want to add a value of 1, so 1 point, to a property that we've established called score. Get these two connected. And now when we play, you see your debug come up the way it should, but the theory is when we touch this, it should roll over to 1. So basically what we've added to our empty, which is our scoreboard, is a message. It's sensing, it's waiting for a message called, with the subject line of pickup. And once it gets that, it's going to add a value of 1 to the property called score. Not too bad. Now if we want more than 1 coin, easily done. I can right mouse click on the coin, Shift D, and it gives me a copy. Now that copy comes complete with all of its logic bricks, but make sure it says tank, not tank.001, pickup. This one did not come with, this has got to be sent to score. So sometimes they'll be missing pieces. This is why it's really important in your pre-production work to get a good grip on your naming conventions and really understand what they are. So now the theory is when I hit play, I get 1 point for the first one, and I should get another point for the second one. So that's how we create a scoring system for a single layer game or a single level game. The naming conventions become paramount. Very, very, very important. So please make sure that it's tank, not tank.001. That the subject to, the message to, is your score, which is your scoreboard up here. And that the subject is pickup, meaning that's what we've called these coins. also make sure that each of these coins have the material of coins, because this is what we're using to send information. So naming conventions get to be extremely important here. All right, stay tuned and we'll take this a little further. We'll move actually to another level, show you how to create other levels real simply with Blender. So have some fun and we'll be right back.